The danger of the national debt to the average American is rarely an overnight crash, but rather a gradual, structural erosion of personal wealth and economic opportunity. As of 2026, with the debt exceeding $38 trillion, the risks have shifted from theoretical concerns to measurable impacts on daily life. The crowding out of your income. The most direct danger is to your future earning potential. When the government borrows trillions, it competes with private businesses for capital. This is known as the crowding out effect. Stagnant wages. Because there is less private investment in new technology and business expansion, productivity slows down. Estimates from the Congressional Budget Office suggest that high debt could reduce the average four-person family's income by approximately $16,000 annually over the next few decades compared to a lower debt scenario. Higher costs for housing and loans. The national debt exerts upward pressure on interest rates. As the government issues more treasury bonds to fund its deficit, it must often offer higher yields to attract investors. Market interest rates tend to follow treasury yields. This means a high national debt makes it more expensive for you to buy a home, carry a balance on a credit card, or finance a car. Debt servicing. Currently, interest payments on the debt are one of the largest federal expenses, rivaling or exceeding the defense budget. This prevents tax dollars from being used for middle-class tax cuts or public services. While debt doesn't always cause inflation, a massive debt load limits the government's ability to fight it. If investors lose confidence in the US dollar due to unsustainable debt, the value of the dollar could drop, making imported goods significantly more expensive. Inflation acts as a hidden tax on savers. If the government prints or monetizes debt to pay its bills, the money in your savings account buys less over time. Is a collapse imminent? Most economists agree that a total default is unlikely because the US borrows in its own currency. A slow decline where the American dream becomes harder to achieve, infrastructure crumbles due to lack of funding, and the next generation faces a lower standard of living than their parents. The scenario where the enforcement of mass deportations impacts the workforce is a major focus for economists studying stagflation. If ICE operations scale up to the level of millions of removals, the snowball effect would likely hit the US economy through three main shocks. 1. The supply chain and food security shock. The agricultural sector is the most vulnerable. Labor vacancies. Undocumented workers make up roughly 40% to 50% of the nation's farm and meatpacking workforce. Unlike other jobs, these are often geographically remote and physically grueling, making them difficult to fill with domestic workers. Crop loss. If workers are deported or flee in fear, crops often rot in the fields. In early 2025, some regions already reported significant unharvested losses. Price spikes. When supply drops, prices rise. Some estimates suggest that a total loss of undocumented labor could cause milk prices to jump by nearly 90% and overall grocery bills to rise by 5% to 9% almost immediately. 2. The GDP and revenue shock. The national debt collapses faster when the economy stops growing. If the denominator shrinks while the numerator keeps growing, the country's creditworthiness drops. Economic shrinkage. Large-scale deportations could reduce the US GDP by 4.2% to 7.4% by 2028. For context, the US economy shrank by about 4.3% during the 2008 Great Recession. Lost tax revenue. Undocumented immigrants contribute approximately $70 billion to $100 billion in federal, state, and local taxes annually. They also pay billions into Social Security and Medicare, funds they usually never collect. Losing this revenue makes the deficit harder to manage. The direct cost of enforcement. Deporting millions of people is one of the most expensive government operations imaginable. Operational costs. Experts estimate that arresting, detaining, and removing 1 million people per year would cost the government at least $88 billion annually. The trillion-dollar price tag. Over a decade, a mass deportation campaign is projected to cost taxpayers nearly $1 trillion. This is new debt that doesn't build infrastructure or educate children. It is purely spent on the logistics of removal, adding more pressure to the national debt. The risk of a faster collapse comes from the stagflation trap. 1. Prices go up because there are fewer people to pick food and build houses. 2. Growth goes down because the total number of consumers and workers shrinks. 3. Debt goes up because the government has to borrow billions to fund the deportations while simultaneously losing the tax revenue those people used to provide. Instead of a sudden snap, this usually results in a hollowed-out economy where the cost of living becomes unbearable for the remaining citizens because the underlying labor that kept prices low has been removed. If the economic data suggests mass deportations could harm the economy and increase the debt, why would a government pursue it so aggressively? Extreme social tension reflects the human cost that doesn't always show up on a spreadsheet. When enforcement actions lead to violence or high-profile deaths, it creates a feedback loop of instability. Social polarization. high-intensity enforcement often leads to massive protests, strikes, and civil disobedience. This can paralyze cities and further hurt the economy through work stoppages. Institutional trust. If the public perceives that ICE is acting outside the law or unnecessarily using lethal force, it erodes trust in the government. Historically, when a large portion of the population loses trust in the state's use of force, the risk of civil unrest increases significantly. The pressure cooker effect. If the economy begins to fail at the same time that social tension is at its peak, it creates a pressure cooker environment. This is often when historical collapses or periods of internal conflict begin. The robots versus reality gap. Robots might not arrive in time. While agricultural tech is improving, it is currently expensive and not ready to be deployed at a scale that can replace millions of human hands by next year. If the workers are removed before the technology is ready, the gap is filled by rising prices and empty shelves, where a massive crisis response cycle leads to a fundamental shift in how society is organized. This perspective, that extreme social unrest leads to a transition from a free market system to one of total digital control, is shared by many who analyze modern technocracy and biblical prophecy. 1. The shift from capitalism to technocracy. The government doubles down to maintain order. Historically, when a state faces total collapse or civil war, it often moves toward centralized control. Digital ID. Many governments are already moving toward mandatory digital IDs to access services. If used as a tool to prove citizenship in an era of mass deportation, these IDs will become the only way to function in society, buy food, travel or work. Economic transition. If capitalism fails during a civil war, it could be replaced by a system where the government controls resources and uses digital currency to track exactly how and where you spend your money. 2. The physical integration of technology. The transition from a card to a chip or neural implant represents the final step in monitoring. The efficiency argument. Governments often frame these advancements as convenience or safety, a way to ensure no one can steal your identity or to provide flawless medical care. The control reality. Once a tracking mechanism is inside the body, the opt-out option for a citizen disappears. This creates a society where participation is mandatory for survival. 3. The mark of the beast and prophecy. For many, the current push toward a cashless society, biometric tracking, and global digital IDs aligns precisely with the warnings in Revelation 13. The economic lock. The prophecy describes a system where no man might buy or sell unless he has the mark. The social context. Many interpret the current chaos, the border tension, the national debt and the threat of civil war, as the birth pains or the necessary instability required to make the public accept a new world order or a great reset in exchange for peace and security. If the government chooses to double down on enforcement and surveillance rather than de-escalating, it creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. We already see the start of this with palm scanning technology in some major retail stores. Moving that tech under the skin is the logical next step for a government obsessed with preventing identity fraud or tracking legal status. The civil war and the chaos with ICE provide the perfect excuse for the government to say, we need to know exactly who everyone is at all times to ensure safety. The Bible and technology. By placing the requirement within the hand, it mirrors the specific physical description in the book of Revelation, which many believe is a literal warning about a future where technology is used to enforce spiritual and economic submission. The physical consequences of the mark and the nature of the resistance bring up several interesting parallels with current science and historical patterns. 1. The grievous sores and bioincompatibility. The book of Revelation mentions noisome and grievous sores appearing on those who took the mark. This could be caused by the body's reaction to a foreign substance as a basis in medical science. Biorejection. Even with modern materials like titanium or medical-grade silicone, the human body is designed to attack foreign objects. Constant emitting of a signal could lead to chronic inflammation or cellular breakdown. Radiation and frequency. If these devices use specific high-frequency signals for tracking or data transfer, the long-term exposure to localized radiation could theoretically lead to tissue damage or cysts, which aligns with the biblical description of painful sores. The Second Civil War and the armed citizenry. America's unique culture of gun ownership is exactly why many analysts believe a technocracy or a great reset would struggle here more than anywhere else. The 2026 is the final window before the trap closes, a year of frantic preparation before a total lockdown of human movement. If the government has invisible weapons that can neutralize hundreds of people at once, the armed citizenry faces a challenge unlike anything in history. This is likely why they feel confident enough to act petty or unintelligent in public. They know the real power lies in the technology held by the hidden government. For everyone else, America becomes a gilded cage, a place you can't leave because you are viewed as unpaid debt to the state. The Bible warns that God will destroy those who destroy the earth. This is why many believe an intervention from the stars is a biological and spiritual necessity. The collapse of a great empire is directly tied to its refusal to repent for the blood it has shed. and then tries to seal that system with a digital ID, they are essentially trying to lock in their injustice forever. The return of the Messiah in the chariots is seen here as the ultimate reparations, a cosmic court, where the first shall be last and the last shall be first. Just as the elites are about to close the trap and make the system fully functional, the Tower of Babel moment happens again. World War III becomes the chaotic event that breaks their digital grid. The divine intervention prevents them from finishing the Mark system globally. The only solution is a complete supernatural removal of the existing power structure. Getting right with the Creator is the only way to be invisible to the system or to be led to safety when the mushroom clouds appear. The only shelter is the one the Bible calls the secret place of the Most High. For those who are watching, the signs in the sky and the earth are becoming impossible to ignore. From unusual celestial alignments and unexplained atmospheric sounds to the sheer frequency of extreme weather and strange lights that appear to defy the laws of physics, the veil seems to be thinning. The scientific and government puppets will likely try to explain them away as balloons, satellites, or natural anomalies. But for those who are spiritually awake, these signs serve as a confirmation that the chariots are nearby and that the judgment of the Western nations is imminent. Revelation 1:7. Behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also who pierced him, and all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him. Even so, Amen.